All right, so here we are, part two, Persuasion. We had kind of a gap in between, so I will have to admit that I'm a little, rustier maybe than I might have been on everything. Although I do have a couple things for sure I want to talk about. But came in for the rain and everything. So I've got some stuff, but before I get into my stuff, where do you want to start? What should we?
Well, I think the gap is instructive. I mean, like, well, that was a big one, right? Like, I think we actually started this novel in May, and unlike the other Jane Austen novels, we didn't break it into 3 readings. We just did 2.
Right.
So
Shortest one, I think. This one.
I think so. It certainly isn't broken into books 1, 2, and 3 like
Right,
the others.
right.
It's just chapters.
Yeah.
Persuasion.
Right. And like 170
Yeah, 178
pages.
pages of Norton type.
Yeah.
So just not that long. 175 really, because it starts on page 3. So, well, then if you add the alternate ending,
the
it was like
original
185
ending. Yeah,
pages
yeah.
total.
Right,
That
right.
that we read, and I found myself like I almost went back and watched our original video just to remind myself like what we thought.
I should have done that.
But I
yeah.
didn't do that. And I mean, but I do remember, just to sort of recap a little bit, one of the things we emphasized, 2 things I vividly remember us emphasizing. One was the sort of like unironic appreciation of the naval officers that, unlike in Sense and Sensibility, it's like there weren't even really any cads. Like everybody that's in the Navy is cool. There's degrees of cool,
Yeah.
but they're all like
And
thumbs up.
and something that continues through the second part of the book.
It did not violate that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
those guys, none of them were revealed to be jerks. The Navy guys, like they were, fun-loving friends. There was even a little bit of a thing over a woman, and it turned out very Grateful Dead. We can share the women, we can share the wine. I didn't want her anyway. Nobody's mad.
Right.
They're just jolly good fellas,
Right.
right.
And trustworthy
And
everything
in
else.
Anne and Harville's language, they are men of constancy.
Yes.
These, I mean,
Yeah.
even the fact that Frederick, he's like, look, man, like, I wasn't even into Louisa, but I realized too late that I had maybe compromised her feelings and a lot of other people that I care about's feelings. And because of that, like, I'm gonna stick with her if that's what she wants. And I thought about that for a long time because, a lot of times we make fun of people for staying in relationships for the wrong reasons, or we psychoanalyze them. And on the surface, that's a wrong reason. Really, even into the depths, I guess it's a wrong reason. But you can also kind of see where a brother's coming from in terms of like, well, are we in a society or not? And I mean, it really did look like you were making love to her. Like, it feels like he's saying to himself, man, I can't do her this way. She's a good woman. I'm a man of honor.
Right.
I'm not gonna just like, I'll just marry her. Like, Anne's probably not into me anyway. My own happiness means less than the overall comitatus. So, while probably stupid, it was noble, I thought, of him to be willing to be with her. So I'll start with that as a carryover for our admiration of the Navy officers. That little move by him reminded me of what we had said.
Well, something I want to circle back to
Yeah.
about this as we get towards the end of this conversation, just because that's where it lands in the reading,
Sure.
is I think this very fascinating exchange almost at the very end of the book with Wentworth's friend, whose name I'm forgetting for the moment, but the other captain.
The widow?
No, the third guy.
Harville.
Harville.
Yeah.
That Anne has that exchange with about like
Constancy.
yeah, and about like they're kind of like weighing these values,
Yeah.
and Anne says this thing like, well, your lives are so much shorter.
Yeah.
We shouldn't hold it against you that
Yeah.
you move on faster.
Yeah.
And one of the things this reminded me of, right? This is the end. Part of the reason all these guys are around
Yeah.
is like the naval phase of the Napoleonic Wars
Yeah.
has just ended.
Yeah.
These guys have been out there like seeing it.
Well, even the last paragraph reminds you. It brings you back to that.
I do not know
We'll
quite
get
what
to
to
that.
make of that.
We'll get to that, but, yeah.
But so one of the things about this world, right, is that there are these men who have been out like in the shit, for years. It's there, lengthy periods of time, it feels like.
Yeah.
Doing this thing is kind of dangerous even when folks aren't shooting at you, right? And then there are men like Mr. Elliot,
Right.
right? And I think we're being asked to see...
Or even Anne's father.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we're being asked to sort of see this distinction as a kind of natural, a kind of Rousseauian hierarchy, as opposed to, Sir Walter with his book that, he's finally willing to add the thing about Anne in, and that kind of thing. And I think, there is this kind of, maybe one of the clearest examples I've seen yet of just a bald, open-faced kind of accusation, like that the aristocracy is a problem,
Yeah, because it has not paid enough attention to the kind of men who we really ought to be admiring. And women, I guess, that we ought to be admiring.
Yeah, it looks forward to this kind of Churchillian kind of England, where like the foundation is not this 1% who owns a bunch of property, but these kind of like poor dudes who kind of like stood up when they had to stand up.
I guess you could make the case that it's far less socially conservative of a novel in Emma, or at least I would make that case as a non-Austen scholar, who hasn't really plumbed the depths, and I certainly liked it better. And I would, sort of adding to that, say that when the division of energy in the first section, the second section was also instructive. Just to shift gears a little bit, I mentioned Louisa, and that first half really popped because it was all these young people hanging out, and they go to Lyme, and Louisa and Henrietta are major characters, and these fun naval dudes are around. But really, if you think about it, the second half, like right where we chose to break off, just randomly, like we started on chapter 15?
Something like that.
It was like page 96, so chapter 15.
Yeah.
So the first 14 chapters are like really a lot more, I think, extroverted and raucous and social. And it felt like almost reading a slightly different book. Like Louisa and Henrietta are only heard of. They're not in any more action.
Right. Well, everything changes when Anne goes to Bath.
Yeah, Bendick or Benwick or whatever the widow
stays with Louisa.
We never see him.
No. We hear a lot.
We hear of them,
Yeah.
but it's like so much more interior with Anne.
Yeah.
Even Russell isn't really in much scenes other than that one exchange where she's like, "I think Elliot's into you."
Yeah.
But instead, you get more of just like your core principles. It whittles it down. Now, Mary and her husband do come, and there is social action, but it just felt more quiet and stakes, like meditating on stakes. And then, the second thing I remembered us emphasizing, and then perhaps we'll just see where this takes us, but I thought it was interestingly feminist in a way that I didn't think of Emma, because like we talked about Mrs. Cross and her just being like, kind of making fun of her brother. Her brother's like, well, women shouldn't even, Frederick, the hero, is like, women shouldn't even be on a boat. And she's like, listen, little brother, like, when you love your husband, you go anywhere. And plus, I've been all over the world, and it's pretty cool. And that was unironic, I thought, and straight up. And so
I kind of expected her to like show her tattoo.
Yeah. Just like, listen, you don't know shit.
Right.
And going back to your conversation about that debate between Harville and Anne, I guess it was a little Shakespearean, this classic moment where a man stands up for his sex and a woman stands up for hers, and they're both debating, and like we've all kind of been there. Although I think like nowadays those conversations have a lot more social landmines than they used to. Like you have to really be intimate with somebody to be willing to have that conversation about, well, women are like this. They're both allowing, by the way, that this is anecdotal. Like, neither of them are pretending that they know the heart of woman or man.
Neither of them are really in this to win it.
Right.
It is clearly...
It's playful.
It is playful, and it is this maneuver, I think, between friends. I think they both know that.
Yeah. And so I thought there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes on with gender with that. And there was also, I think, more so than any other, my final observation is more so than any novel we've read by far, and I'll point to some passages later if you want, but by far more attention is paid to male vanity and how men look. And most of that is through the
Sir
father.
Walter,
Through the
yeah.
father. But like in general, it's like, no, this is a big deal. Like men care how they look too, and women care how men look. And like, Sir Walter is like, is it Walter?
Yeah, who's
Walter.
always constantly talking about
in Bath, like all these men walk by and they're all like disgusting.
Yeah.
But then he like immediately, he's like, but then, like I could watch like 50 women walk by. This is on page 100, I will point it, because it reminded me of our buddy Andy. This is a little. I won't share all this, but there's this thing called the Yingst theorem, where, but yeah, he's like, this is on page 99, at bottom. He, that is Walter, had frequently observed as he walked that one handsome face would be followed by 30 or 35 frights, and once as he had stood in a shop in Bond Street, he had counted 87 women go by, one after the other, without there being a tolerable face among them. And he just goes on and on in this way.
Yeah.
But then he says, as for the men, they were infinitely worse. So there is some interesting gender play going on there that, like, at least as much of a prick as Walter is, he's not. He's also judging what men look like. Like, it almost feels like he should be a judge on Project Runway, this guy.
There's this campy, kind of vanity.
Yeah.
Like you imagine him.
He's a Tim Gunn kind of guy.
Yeah. You kind of imagine him on YouTube going over his like morning skincare routine or something. Yeah. I thought one of the things that the second half of this novel, kind of building on that, I think one of the things that the second half of this novel was really concerned with was really parsing out like who to take seriously and who not to. And one of the things that really weighed on that was this kind of vanity. And I think Sir Walter has a kind of a lock on the physical vanity stuff, but there's a lot of social vanity.
Like the eldest daughter, would you say, has a lot of social vanity?
Yes.
Anne has some social vanity.
Well, there's certainly enough to go around,
Yeah.
but there are some egregious, like Mrs. Musgrove for sure. The concern about the parties and who's going to be there and who she's going to meet.
And then that business with the Irish royalty, their distant cousins.
Dalrymple,
Yeah.
And then honestly, I've had a bit of a kind of beef with Lady Russell from the beginning.
Sure.
But then I found myself, interestingly, feeling a little more ambivalent about Lady Russell, who, right off the bat, she kind of gets on my nerves very early in today's reading, complaining about the noise of the children at Christmas.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Well, and to her credit, Mrs. Musgrove is like, man, after like my daughter almost died,
right?
Everything that's gone on,
right.
I like a little noise around here. That was nice.
I'm reminded, this is a bit of a tangent, but I can't help. I'm reminded, I went to a lecture, this is when I was still in Mississippi, oh man, I'm blanking on his name, sort of Harvard African American Studies.
Gates?
No, he was in The Matrix.
Help me.
I
know who you're talking about. Ran for president too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we know who you're talking about.
Well,
his name will come back to us.
Yeah, it'll come to me. I'm having a moment. But he gave a lecture. At University of Mississippi, which is kind of like still a thing, even in like 2004 or whenever this was, and Cornell West.
Yes.
And he came in and he's doing his full Cornell West, and I do not
brother this, sister
do
that.
not mean to mock, but yet doing the full thing, and a baby starts crying. And it's in the big auditorium. The crowd is packed in, and baby starts crying. He's introducing his conversation, starting with one of the Aristotelian conversations, one of the early things there, and he's like, he's playing this game. He's like, as I'm sure you all the students in the room will remember. And he kind of is doing this thing. And this baby starts crying, and this woman, maybe 3 or 4 rows up, like very close to the stage, like gets up and is trying to kind of like sneak out with the baby, and he stops her. He's like, no, please stay. And everybody's kind of like, wow, okay. And he really kind of like belabors it a little. He's like, please.
Yeah.
And then she finally gets her to sit back down, and like miraculously the baby stops crying.
Yeah.
Right at the same time, And he just kind of pauses for a second, and he looks out to the room like he just wants us to understand.
Yeah.
But he can't quite figure out how to, like,
what to say.
you know,
Yeah.
and he finally just says, "Love the sound of babies."
Yeah.
And I just thought, I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
Like, for the rest of the day,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know? And it was just so magical. And I kind of, when Lady Russell's like, well, I'll know better.
Yeah.
You know, and look, I get it. I've been on planes.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But at the same time, like, what kind of jerk do you have to be to, like, say that out loud, to feel it so strongly?
And I think that even though the middle sister, or the youngest sister, excuse me, is problematic, Mary, I think there's, like, these oddly redeeming things about her. Like, she's not even that great of a mother, right? Like, she's willing to ditch her kids so she can go out.
Right.
But, like, I don't know, she's in the game. Like, she's into her family. Not all the way, maybe not enough, but, like, she's doing family in a way that it's hard to imagine the older sister doing it. And part of that is just, like, the noise of kids. And Anne is very comfortable around babies and kids. I mean, she's happy to take care of them when the boy falls, and she has to take care of him in the first half of the book. And she enjoys babies, and she enjoys Harville's kids. And I think that Russell probably is just a little more set in her approach. And she's like, oh, I can't with the babies, you know.
But then, right, like, I'm kind of ready to be like, oh, you know, you're that, you know. But then just a few pages later, on 112, she and Anne are having this exchange about Mr. Elliot.
Right.
And Lady Russell has this thing. I'm going to kind of read this because it's such a kind of 180 in a way. You know, Anne kind of blushes when it comes up, and Russell says, "I'm no matchmaker," which I think that's a statement. Like, when those words come together in a Jane Austen novel, that really means something.
Yeah.
I'm no matchmaker, as you well know, being much too well aware of the uncertainty of all human events and calculations. I only mean that if Mr. Elliot should sometime hence pay his address to you, and if you should be disposed to accept him, I think there would be every possibility of your being happy together. And then she kind of, you know, I'm going to skip down a little bit, and she says, I own that to be able to regard you as the future mistress of Kellynch, the future Lady Elliot, to look forward and see you occupying your dear mother's place, succeeding to all her rights and all her popularity as well as all her virtues, would be the highest possible gratification to me. And I'm in this moment suddenly where I'm like, okay, I can't hate her. Like this is a really delicately put, like, you know, this
She's
is
like reminding her, you would get these things.
Well,
like, and I'm not saying do it, but I'm
there's-
just helping you
there's
understand.
all this caution too.
Yeah.
This, like, hey, you need to be happy.
Yeah.
You need to, you know, it's not that kind of like, these mothers in previous books who are like, but he's got 50,000 pounds,
Right.
You know, and she's like, if he likes you,
Yeah.
and if you like him back, and I feel this real emphasis. She's like, no, really.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because of how Anne even is defending her at the end when she's arguing with Wentworth after they're engaged, and she's like, I can't really blame her because, I mean, I was 17.
Right.
And it's like...
even Wentworth.
Yeah, like, if we're going to seriously, you know, be annoyed with Austen and the age play, and I think we are, right? Like, we looked at it in Emma especially, like what we were sort of jokingly calling grooming, but not entirely joking with Knightley. Like, if we just think that some of these ages are too young, then it's kind of unfair, I guess, to, like, completely be mad at Russell for being like, no, not yet. Like, you can't marry that guy right now. You know, you live a little more. I
think we're supposed to finish this novel with the sense that, like, maybe Russell poked in a little more than she strictly had to, but also maybe it just wasn't the right time. And
they hadn't found themselves yet.
Well, you know,
it's true.
I mean, you know, neither of them are old.
Right.
He's had a chance to establish himself. She's had a chance to kind of, like, see what's what.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that there is something to be said there about this delay, and the kind of, I mean, it in some ways it feels like it is unnecessary suffering, except nobody can really see the future, right? You can only look backwards, and
yeah.
So there's that. We also get I think maybe as a bit of a foil, maybe as a bit of a kind of just additional voice, we get the introduction of Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, she's huge in the second half.
In this reading.
But an out of nowhere character who
Yes.
has not been set up at all.
Yeah, and so I was talking about this with Suzanne at home. You know, she takes a lot of interest in our readings of this, and I said this thing that she thought was pretty interesting that I just thought was a kind of passing thing, but I'll say it again here just in case. I saw in Mrs. Smith this kind of very like Charles Dickens style move. You know, this kind of it is Anne doing this basic human goodness, right? This is not Emma visiting the poor.
No, because they knew each other in the past. I mean, it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Right, and Mrs. Smith's on hard times. Yeah. She's ill, and Anne is like, you know, I have a duty here. Plus, she genuinely enjoys Smith's company.
Yeah.
A favorite old teacher.
They like talking.
Which maybe is part of my...
This is even like a defensive gossip in a way. It's
Right.
like, well, if we enjoy gossiping, so be it. Like, it's fun.
Yeah, and she's got all the hookups.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I love that one passage where Smith is like explaining the chain of gossip.
She's
like, and then of course it all came to me, and it's like you can easily imagine them having tea and those words happening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's also this kind of what I think of as the kind of like Dickens style kind of like accidental alignment of things, right? That Anne finds, you know, probably like the definitive sort of revelation of the book is Smith's sort of disclosure about Eliot's past and all this stuff and you know, if it weren't, you know, like I think there's this simple version of this where we say it's a simple moral move where Austen is saying because Anne was this good person who did this thing, she's being rewarded. But I think it's more complicated than that. I think it has to do with this kind of, I don't know what it is. It's a thing that I find sort of annoying sometimes in Dickens novels, or in like those parlor mysteries, those Mrs. Marple, Perot things, where like these accidents just line up, you know, in whatever way. But that's kind of also what happens here. Is just kind of like in the course of just her daily life, she accidentally backs into this really important piece of information. And
it's also unlike Dickens in that it was clear that Anne wasn't ever going to marry Eliot anyway. I mean, she's like, I knew it. I knew something was wrong with him. And there had been passages.
Yeah.
She's like, I can't put my finger on it, but it's like he's not passionate about anything. Like even when he disparages Mrs. Clay, she likes him as much as anybody. And Anne's like, how can he be like Teflon that way? And you know, I like a guy that'll like stand for something. And so I guess what I'm saying is that while those are crucial pieces of information for the reader, you could also make the case that had Mrs. Smith not been in this novel at all, everything in this novel could easily have still gone the way it went, because Eliot was already had plan B with Mrs. Clay. He was already wheedling her. It's clear. That had nothing to do with Smith. He didn't even know Anne was talking to Smith. He didn't even know Smith was in Bath.
No, but I think we're supposed to believe that there is this chance that, I mean, because this Eliot, this kind of Anne Eliot and Mr. Eliot sort of thing, this is exactly like the story in
Mansfield Park.
Yeah. And you know, like it is an obvious move that of course you want Anne to marry him. You want her to like be able to reclaim this ancestral
become mistress of the home.
Yeah. You know, you because especially as modern readers, I think probably also in Austen's time, but especially in modern readers, we are irked by these entails and by these like not primogeniture, but the male only. I forget the word for that.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff irks us, and so when we see something that looks like a sort of you know hack that's going to let Anne retain this wealth and retain this thing, it's easy to kind of like hope for that, you know.
But I mean, all along, It's just clear that she still loves Frederick all along. That's the issue with it, right? Like, she's never going to give that up. And so I'm not saying Mrs. Smith, I'm not saying that her arguable essentialness to the plot is not a critique. In fact, I would say it makes it better than that move Dickens makes. Because what you have instead is just like another layer of characterization for Anne, and frankly, the reader needed to know. Mm-hmm. Like, right, like that was, I felt like more of a gift to the reader than to Anne. It's like, oh, this is what. But you know, we're praising the novel rightfully. And but while we're on this subject, let me just say this: like I thought. It's interesting that the author forbears from really punishing any of the bad players here. Mm-hmm. I guess arguably Elizabeth might have to be an old maid, but she's still only 29, so who knows? And evidently is still pretty and stuff. But like, you know, Mrs. Clay, I mean, she's like, whether punished or not, I mean, Elliot's still going to get the house. Mr. Elliot, that is. Mm-hmm. He's going to get everything he wanted. And I thought, frankly, it was dumb. The pretext that if he married Anne, that he would have a better chance of stopping Walter from getting married based on the son-in-law's rights. Especially given that Walter doesn't even give a fuck about Anne. Right. So I thought that was like a little bit of a weird, like Jane, the writer, writing in a hurry. It's like, that's not how you stop people from hooking up. Now, him hitting on Clay himself, that is a way to stop. But like that pretense of a wedding, like, I don't know. Like, I don't see where the son-in-law is so positioned, even in Austen's time, to prevent the man from, like, if Mrs. Clay drops dead of a heart attack, he could still just go marry somebody else. And like, which, by the way, he could do now. Like now that Mrs. Clay has been pulled out of the fray, all you need is another woman to give him a son. So all of that I thought was kind of flimsy and weird.
Yeah, well, I think part of what we're supposed to see is that Elliot is a schmuck.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
There's that suggestion, I forget who made it, I think Smith, that he had even kind of considered basically like making his marriage to Anne contingent on Sir Walter promising not to,
right?
You know, which I assume would not have been unheard of back in the day.
Yeah,
you know, I mean these deals were complicated in some cases.
I mean, you can sign anything you want, I guess.
Right. Now, I do think it's pretty interesting that he had this plan B with Mrs. Clay. I had been under the impression that Mrs. Clay was quite a bit older as I was reading, and so this
now,
idea
she's like I think Elizabeth's age. I think she's in her late 20s, which means from Walter's point of view, she's like trophy hot, right? Like he's like in the beginning, Elizabeth's assuring Anne, she's like, well, he hates freckles. But then, like, Austen makes a point of having Walter say, you know, something about her skin routine. You can't even see the freckles anymore. And it's like, I bet.
She's not, that stuff,
he's gone without for a long time. Right. And there is this single woman in his face every day. There is no doubt that he's going to crack. And the narrator said, well, Clay gave up the longer game. Like, I think the implication is that Mr. Elliot's plan worked. Yeah. So he's not punished.
Right.
And that's interesting, because in some novels, it's like the cad just goes down.
Right.
And that's not what happened here.
Right. He's been socially exiled.
Yeah.
You know, but there hasn't been this punishment. I'm fascinated with the centrality of Clay in this. You know, this character who seemed just kind of like a minor...
An appendage.
Yeah, you know, in the first half. But then, basically, if she hadn't been in the household, almost none of this would have happened.
Right.
And I think that's really fascinating in some ways. Now, obviously, the Wentworth and plot would have still been spinning in whatever direction, but Eliot maybe wouldn't have even.
I mean, it does seem like one complicating or perhaps aggravating element of Eliot's otherwise completely odious characterization is that when he saw Anne at Lyme, I think he was just like struck by, wow, she's like, I dig her. Like, like independent of all his like schmucky schemes, he was like, okay, that's not bad. So, but absolutely, he would not have come to Bath and been skulking around the Elliots' like house at Camden had Mrs. Clay not been there. So you're absolutely right that just as with Smith, it's like all these characters make it so interesting, even though the plot is always Anne and Frederick. And I dig that, you know.
Yeah, and so I think, you know, it's an interesting twist. It feels to me, so one of the things that I continue to feel a little ambivalent about is like, we know, you know, like you can't get to Persuasion and be like, I wonder if it's going to work out.
Right.
So the question that becomes, how is it going to work out?
Yeah,
Right.
It sure would be a curveball if it ended with Anne just single.
Or marrying Elliot and realizing what a jerk he is, or, you know, whatever.
Well, because, you know, it was, well, finish your thought, because you might be going there anyway.
Well, so, you know, one of the things that Jane Austen has to do is figure out how to make the journey sort of worth it. And of course, this is part of the reason that we're still reading her, right? Because it's not really the plot anymore. It's about these kind of incisive moments and these kind of, you know, interesting devices and the way that she moves people. You know, we know that this is where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
Right. There maybe is, like, we don't know exactly what's going to happen to Elliot. We don't
Right.
know exactly what's going to happen to Sir Walter.
Or the entail.
Yeah, but we know that there's a marriage coming.
Yeah.
You know, and people are going to be happy about it. And so the trick then becomes how to get there in this way that aligns with this other stuff she's trying to say about the aristocracy, about gender, about
Human nature.
Right.
There was more meditation on that in this book.
On human nature in here. And so you know, I'm a bit ambivalent sometimes, because on the one hand, it's like, I feel like there's less skin in the game, right? Because I don't, you know, it's like watching those old those TV shows we watched in the 80s growing up, right? We knew that the guy was coming back next week. We knew it was going to work out. And, you know, and so the cliffhanger, to some degree, relies on your kind of willing to kind of play along. And I think that that's part of what Austen's doing here. And on the one hand, I find it a little bit kind of genre schlocky, right? Which I know sounds harsh. But on the other hand, I think it may be sort of the real strength of it is that it sort of says, like, well, of course it works out okay. That's not the point. The point is,
did I pull it off?
Mechanism.
Was it smooth?
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of probably, for all my love of Stephen King, I guess, like, if I had to rank, and I don't love ranking literature, but if I had to rank the one part of his whole universe that I thought was the most mind-blowing, it's in the novel Misery. I don't know if you either saw the movie or read the book.
Yeah.
But Annie is giving this speech to Paul about how she used to go to those kind of movies that you're talking about, that where it would be like a Saturday cliffhanger, and then you come back
have to wait next week. Yeah, the serials.
And she shows up like the week. She says, "I thought all week about how they're going to get the hero out of this problem. The train went over the cliff." And I, you know, so excited and blah, 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 blah. And of course, it's Kathy Bates. She's like, starts low and then builds to this scary screaming. And so then we get there, and it's revealed that just before the train went off the cliff, he jumped out of the train. And she starts screaming, and I stood up and I started yelling at everybody in the theater, but that's not what happened. Don't you dumbasses understand that's not what happened? She's like flipping out. And on the one hand, it's super scary, and you're like, oh man, Paul is in trouble being alone with this woman. But I thought it was also this wild moment where King was working out his own anxieties as a writer, because Paul, after she leaves, sits back and he thinks, and you know what? She's right. And he like throws away his book and starts the fuck over. And I do think that Austen is aware by, what is this, book 5? Book 5.
Yeah.
That she knows the formula. She's probably as tired of it as we are. The whole game is, can I do this in a way that's not going to make people feel like they got cheated?
Right.
And I think this one definitely did that. I mean, like without question, I knew that she was going to marry Wentworth, and and it went the way it did. But there were enough interesting things going on along the way, and I did like the way she stuck the landing with them, and you know, so yeah.
I feel like we should give that some time. One of the things that I think, and I guess we've still got some time. One of the things that I really liked, probably my favorite part of this book, is that parlor scene that begins with the conversation about Benwick that she's having with Harville. So Harville and Wentworth are writing a letter to Benwick, and Harville finishes his part, and he and Anne start having this.
That's when they have the constancy,
somewhat playful, somewhat real conversation, which of course we find out later,
tore Wentworth up. Hearing her say these words,
Wentworth is just rocked. And I think basically like the sequence that starts with that conversation that goes to the letter, I think is just dynamite. Like I think you could cut that like 3 pages out.
Be a great short story.
Plop it in an anthology and just be like,
absolutely.
And I don't actually know for sure what's so good about it, except I'm in a way that I'm not sure I'm prepared to explain, even though I've thought about it a bit. I actually finished this reading a little bit earlier than I usually do, so I had some time to process this. But the mixture here of conversation, overhearing, and correspondence it contains this just whole world of Jane Austen stuff, and it's all condensed into this 2 or 3 page passage that just does it all. It has like every element of a Jane Austen novel.
The things people like about her are there.
And so because there are these bits like I'll complain sometimes at home, kind of tongue in cheek, that one of the things that has to happen in every Jane Austen novel is people are confused about who's engaged.
Right.
And part of the problem there, right, is that this world is so stiff. You can't just say like, "So what's up, dog? You guys doing it or what?" And then at the same time, there's all this correspondence back and forth that becomes kind of the vehicle for some of that to unfold. But of course, since it's correspondence, it's slow. Right, and so
he took a huge risk by putting that in writing and giving it to her. Right. Like, just what you're saying reminds me that fully compromised. Like, if it turned out that Anne's not nice anymore, or doesn't love him even, that's huge, because he just does away with that dance you're talking about. He's like, listen, here's what I'm doing, dog.
It's only 20 pages earlier. That we see Mr. Elliot hung out to dry by a letter that somebody saved. And of course there's that whole dangerous liaisons example and that kind of thing. So he has just cracked. He's just kind of like I'm not gonna go on without trying, and it is this big dramatic moment. He hands her the letter, and I wrote down.
I left my gloves.
Yeah, I wrote down. Maybe the most Jane Austen sentence in all of history.
What page are we on?
Page 168.
Okay.
He has just handed her the thing.
Yeah.
She reads it. Which, by the way, right? Like, this letter is fire. Like, Like, I like to pretend like I'm a good husband.
Yeah.
But I have never done anything as good as this letter, right?
Well, and especially he did it all like in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, he just banged it out.
It's supposed to be a testament, I guess, to his he's a naval officer, but this guy's like a very good writer. Because in other novels, they make a thing about whether you're a good writer.
Yeah. Well,
it's important for a man to be a good letter writer.
The letter writing.
Yeah.
And so he just pours it out
in
this way that I think suggests, to me at least, he has rehearsed this.
These are things he's been thinking for 7 years?
8.5 years, he says, right? But then the very next sentence, such a letter was not to be soon recovered from.
Indeed.
I mean, so now Anne is rocked, right? And one of the things that I think is really interesting about this is that it combines this kind of like half-heard conversation with a little bit of a complicated history, with a letter that means that now she has to kind of like compose a response, and
But she's like, it's going to be verbal. I'm going to go talk
right,
to him
she's
right
got
now.
yeah, well he kind of makes it
Which
clear
for a woman,
yeah.
Anne, I would say, is the most sexually aggressive of the women in the 5 novels. Like, once she realizes, oh, this is a thing, there's none of this, like, it's like, well, I'm going.
Right.
Like, I gotta go.
Right. She's not looking for the pianoforte.
And I don't mean sexually aggressive in
No,
a way.
no.
Like, there's plenty
No.
of Mrs. Clays in the world of Austen.
Right.
But even with Clay, like, she'll never just come out and say to Walter, like, hey, it's right here. She probably could have made some progress if she'd have done that. But, like, you get the impression that Anne was just going to respond to this letter and be like, yes, I love you right now. Let's do it. Like, no more games.
And there seems to be this fear that if she waits even a minute too long,
he'll think that she's turning him down. Yeah.
Right, and then he's off to sea.
Yeah.
And so there is this like urgency.
Yeah.
And then another kind of Dickinson style thing, right? Charles hands her off like in this kind of selfish way, right?
I'm gonna go look at my gun.
Yeah, I got this thing.
This is very American for an Austen novel.
Well, he's always shooting.
Well, it's a military themed novel.
But he's not. He's hunting.
Charles likes to go
He's
hunt.
shooting birds.
It helps him to get away from Mary. Let's be honest.
Well, and he likes to bring in these men and like go out and do this thing.
Yes.
And he's just whatever. But
Austen seems more interested in men in this novel
maybe
than
so.
in other.
Well,
This
Charles,
is almost like Austen sitting back and saying, men, they're not entirely boring. You know what I mean?
Hey,
like
there's stuff going on.
Yeah. Like men do stuff, and they're
Yeah.
kind of interesting.
Right.
There's a reason we put up with their shit.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there's this kind of coincidence where Charles is like, "Hey, do me a solid."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining this kind of like contemporary remake of this story where Anne's like,
yes,
and it's settled. It's settled right there.
It is. They deal with it, and I mean, I encountered a stylistic thing that I don't know if this is a swerve or if this is related to the things we're noticing, but I think more than any other novel in this one, she handles quotations differently.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yes.
Like, look at this part on page, the one I'd seen it like 5 times and not marked it. And then finally on page 132, I just marked this. This is where Mr. Elliot is teasing Anne at the concert. He's like, somebody we've both known for a long time told me all about you. And we haven't even met Smith yet, or we have, but we can't imagine it would be her.
Right.
And so look at this little weird handling of quotation marks. So he delighted in being asked, but he would not tell. No, sometime or other perhaps, but not now. And then we're still in quotation marks. He would mention no names now, but such he could assure her had been the fact. He had many years ago received such a description of Miss Anne Elliot as had inspired him with the highest idea of her merit and excited the warmest curiosity to know her. So, like, Austen's handling these quotes in a way that reminds me of, like, the way New Yorkers talk. Like, the full conflation of summary and quotation. Like, no, he's tired of that. He wants to do this. And so you're like, you're framing as if it's all quotations, but it's not. And you're even using third person. Does that make sense? Like, it's it's like I'm putting quotation marks around this, but this is also a summary.
Well, we were talking about that indefinite narrator in Emma.
Yeah.
That's not the right term. I forget what we called it, but that narration where the narrator seemed to come in kind of almost with Emma's voice. And there's something similar going on. I marked it on 157 where she's thinking about Wentworth, and it says, this is the very top of 157, she tried to be calm and leave things to take their course and tried to dwell much on this argument of rational dependence, and then quote, surely if there be constant attachment on each side of our hearts, must understand each other ere long. And then it goes on for quite some time. And my sense of this is an internal monologue. That's been externalized, at least typographically.
Yes.
And I think it's really interesting.
The rhetorical effect of that. Like, what do you think's going on there? I mean, I almost liken it to New York speech, but I don't know what I even mean by that.
It really stood out to me As you say, there's many examples of it, and
Yeah.
I think they're almost all Anne.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, I would hazard to say I'm pretty sure it's nothing but Anne.
Yeah.
And it is this direct pipeline into an internal sort of fully formed thought.
Yes.
And I think that what we're getting here is this externalization of her internal process that to me feels like this very successful attempt to really just fully dress this character, to just really fully say here is like not just like the sense or the sensibility or the feeling. This is the actual literal, like, word for word thought that is happening.
And I wonder if there isn't something almost like a postmodern going on with this. Like if I were, like, I'm certainly not well heeled in high theory, but I know that, you know, beginning with the deconstructionists and even with some of the high gender theorists like Butler, you know, there's often this discussion of, you know, nothing is real except by way of perception and representation and signification.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, doesn't matter what the fuck his exact words were. Like in some ways, summary and quotation, we make a big deal about the difference between those things with our students, right? Like, oh, summary is a shorter version, quote is the exact wording, right? Paraphrase is about the same length, but and it's like, no, like if I go tell somebody something you said, you're fully in my power, and that's a direct quote. Like, you don't get to listen and say, wait, I didn't put it that way. Like, in that moment, it might as well be. I just wonder if there isn't something there about social power and representation.
Yeah.
And how we don't really have full control over our words.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Another little detail I noticed on page 125 is the only moment in the book, I think, where Anne's not present, where you get to see characters talk to each other, and it's when Wentworth is in the confectioner's shop with women.
Right.
And when Anne leaves with Mr. Elliot, as soon as they were out of sight, the ladies of Captain Wentworth's party began talking of them. And it's not even that long. It's like just 4 little paragraphs of dialogue. And Miss Atkinson, who dined with them at the Wallaces, says he is the most agreeable man she was ever in. So they're feeding Wentworth's jealousy, these women, right? But then one woman says she is pretty, I think, Anne Elliot, very pretty when one comes to look at her. It is not the fashion to say so, but I confess I admire her more than her sister. Oh, so do I. And so do I. So 3 women.
Yeah, all the men are wild after Mrs. Elliot.
And so 3 women in a row say Anne is prettier than Elizabeth. And the 3rd woman says, no comparison, but the men are all wild out. So I wonder if that passage isn't there as a way to show us, the reader, that Anne's insecurities were all in her own head. Like, all along, people did not think she was homely or plain. She had just internalized this version of abuse from Walter and Elizabeth. But, like, in the world, everyone knew that Anne was good-looking and fun. Like, do you think that's, like...
I do.
Escape from that.
I do. I also think that this frames what I think is, you know, in some ways the key question of the book.
Yeah.
Which comes up right at the end.
Yeah.
I've marked it as starting around 173. Maybe it's in some other stuff as well. But the book is called Persuasion, and one of the sort of sticking points when Wentworth and Anne finally get back together comes up in 173 right at the top. Was it not enough to make the fool of me, which I appeared? How could I look on without agony? Was not the very sight of the friend who sat behind you? This is Wentworth talking about the night of the concert. Was not the recollection of what had been, the knowledge of her influence, the indelible, unmovable impression of what Persuasion had once done? Was it not all against me? But one of the things that comes out as this goes on, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but one of the things that comes out is this doubling of persuasion as like, you know, being convinced to behave a certain way, and then persuasion in the sense of like your character, like of a certain persuasion.
Yeah.
And I think that the novel is I mean, because again, if we go back to the very beginning, that question of persuasion comes up. It very early on. I probably won't be able to find it very quickly, but very early on, we hear the story of Lady Russell. Let's see.
Like when Lady Russell nixed the
ta-
relationship?
Yeah. But it's in the first chapter somewhere. And it says basically that she was persuaded.
It was the first use of the word in that book was in relation to that. And it comes back to Russell again at the end.
And then here we come, back to this question of persuasion.
Yeah.
And we see it just like in the next paragraph down, right? Anne says, if I was wrong in yielding to persuasion once, remember that it was it was to persuasion exerted on the side of safety, not of risk. When I yielded, I thought it was to duty, right?
Yeah.
But then, as this kind of goes on, Anne's use of persuasion shifts to like the kind of person she is.
Yeah.
And now she's like, now the safe play is to marry you.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really interesting thing, and I think it ties in well with, this kind of externalization of her internal thinking and this
other
kind
people
of stuff that you're talking about in terms of other people's vision of her versus her vision of herself. And I think one of the things that ultimately this book is really wrestling with, that makes it interesting, that makes it worthwhile, is this kind of question of like, who you are and to what extent that is shaped by the forces of other people's ideas.
Yes.
And it's
that's what I kind of meant, I guess, by postmodern thinking.
And it's all encapsulated in this doubling, this kind of, I don't know, Derrida style, like sign signifier thing happening with persuasion.
Yeah.
Right. That really caught me at the end when Anne, finally kind of fully in possession of herself, says, well, let me just lay it out.
Yeah.
Also having clearly like rehearsed, what happened and really worked it out in this satisfying way. And then of course, it has this happy ending, which makes everything else feel pretty good. Although I will say, like Jane Austen has never been against, a well-timed cut, but boy is she sharp on Sir Walter by the end. Basically, the last chapter, the very last chapter.
That's just her being like, here's what happened to everybody else.
Yeah,
she does that in a
lays
lot
it
of
all
books.
out, right? And I think this is, this is a time-tested formula.
Yeah.
But again, it is talking about people and people's opinions of people. But right towards about the bottom third of 175, right? Captain Wentworth with £25,000. This is why Lady Russell is no longer. This is why Lady Russell is no longer concerned, right? Captain Wentworth with £25,000 and as high in his profession as merit and activity could place him was no longer nobody. He was now esteemed quite worthy to address the daughter of a foolish spendthrift baronet who had not the principle or sense enough to maintain himself in the situation in which Providence had placed him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is damning.
It is, and it was damning enough to where I was kind of disappointed. I mean, I loved how, I think even somebody mentions this, like Mrs. Clay is scheming to marry him, and Mr. Elliot is scheming not. And it was almost like a soap opera, like in the best way, right? Like I almost felt like he's such a fool. Like I kind of wanted Mrs. Clay to completely pull the wool over on him, but then I thought, no, but then he'll win because he'll have a son who, actually, the best way for him to get fucked over is what happens, which is that Clay gives up on him and goes to Elliot. Now she's going to get the house without having to put up with him. Right. So yeah, I mean, in a way, the ending that we were talking at the beginning even more damns him. Like he doesn't even get the girl,
right?
Even though she's not like awesome,
right?
you could argue it's better than nothing. He's left with just his like equally vapid eldest daughter to just sit and snap at each other all day, I guess.
Right.
You know?
and then basically see his line end.
Yeah.
And Elliot also gets a bit of a, his final disposition on 177.
Yeah.
The news of his cousin's engagement burst on Mr. Elliot most unexpectedly. It deranged his best plan of domestic happiness.
Right, so he was kind of into her. Kind of reminded me of that guy in Mansfield Park, Henry, who had a chance for redemption but blew it.
Yeah. And then there's this little like snaggy little thing, right? He soon quitted Bath, and on Mrs. Clay's quitting it likewise soon after, and being next heard of as established under his protection in London, which
totally his mistress,
right? Which
it says on the bottom,
which Meyer Spacks footnotes for us.
Yeah.
Mrs. Clay's affections had overpowered her interest, and she had sacrificed, for the young man's sake, the possibility of scheming longer for Sir Walter.
Then we go into present tense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
She has abilities, however, and it is a doubtful point whether his cunning or hers may finally carry the day. So they're going to be scheming. Whether after preventing her from being the wife of Sir Walter, he may not be wheedled and caressed at last into making her the wife of Sir William. That's a tight way to fade out on them.
Right.
It's like if I wanted to, I could write this whole other novel, y'all.
Right, which would be pretty dark
and awesome, right?
Right. But the soap opera-ness of it, that you just brought up, like, just really struck me. Yes, like the sort of broad, kind of bold strokes here at the end. Like I'm imagining this like telenovela style where they're all in like big belt buckles and going like all the time.
Yes, dun dun dun.
Right, but then the last thing before we
got to talk about so before we get to the thing about war.
Yeah,
because I know that's what we want to close out on. You can explain in like as short or as long as you want. What did you prefer, her original ending or the ending she wound up going with?
I did like the second ending better.
Her original ending?
No,
the official ending.
Yeah,
me too.
And
I thought her original felt hurried and rushed.
I did. After I finished, I did a little bit of reading specifically about that, because this is the first time we've seen any kind of revision stuff, right? I suspect that there's archives somewhere that have like rough drafts or whatever. But,
fair copies.
But this is the first time we've seen at this level, like, somebody who's like, this is important enough to include. And I agreed with the sort of cursory kind of research I did, that a lot of people seem to think that the original ending was too focused just on Anne and Wentworth. It didn't respect the kind of like community that was involved in all of this, which was a big part of how Austen's world in the novels operated. And I thought it was sort of flat, it was sort of gray, largely because it left out like this is not about two people. It is, but it's also about all the people in their orbit. And the second
and by doing it, like, even when she mentioned what happened to the other people, it's like everything feels in a hurry in that original. Like, she takes a little more time with the part we saw. But so to close the thing, like,
so this
talk
last
about the Navy a lot. Tell me your thoughts on the end of the last sentence.
So I don't know this history very well, and I didn't prepare for this the way I might have in a more serious venue, but my understanding, so this novel is set around 1814.
We're at the very end of the Napoleonic War, right?
Except there's a second part of the Napoleonic War after he escapes Elba, right? But my understanding, again...
They believe the fighting has cessated for now. Well, it has cessated for now.
Right, and I'm sure, historians could like nuance this, but my understanding is basically the first part, the pre-Elba portion of the Napoleonic War was largely naval. Hence the British armadas and all of these captains who had been fighting men, right? Until very recently. And they say, like, the admiral who rents Kelly Lunch is like, oh, nothing quite like a war. And all of these young men who have been, fighting men of the British Navy. And then my understanding is, Napoleon is exiled to Elba. He makes another attempt when he escapes, and that that sort of second part of the fighting is largely infantry fighting on land.
Yeah.
It ends with water.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know what to make of if we're thinking specifically of Wentworth. My sense is that he's out. Like he did his tour of duty.
Yeah.
He's collected his prize money. He's gotten married, and he's just going to be retired.
But she does seem to imply that Anne has to live in dread of a future war.
Well, I mean,
Right.
so here's the sentence. She gloried in being a sailor's wife. So call back to the admiral's wife saying like, "Yo, it's not terrible."
Yeah.
Right. And there's all these ways to understand that. Like, it could be the life that this offers her. It could be the travel, whatever.
Excitement.
It could be just the status.
The kind of men that do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But she must pay the tax of quick alarm for belonging to that profession, which is, if possible, and here's where it gets really tricky, more distinguished in its domestic virtues than in its national importance.
Yeah.
And I genuinely don't know what to make of that. Like, so the tax of quick alarm. Okay, so she has to be worried that he's going to be called on
Well, in
to
the
risk his
previous
life
sentence
again.
it said the dread of a future war
Yeah,
that could
right.
all that could
But-
dim her sunshine.
But what about being a sailor
Yeah.
is more distinguished in its domestic virtue than in its national importance? This is where I get lost.
I mean, I wonder if it isn't a callback to how men like Walter, like at the beginning of the novel, he's like, oh, they're just sailors. That the national importance is not distinguished; it is not recognized.
But what
And so, like, even though like domestic happiness, you'll find that like people won't maybe value these guys as much as they should.
Yeah, I mean, so if I parse it out, right, that if possible, so one of the suggestions there is that like the national importance is so high
Okay,
that it might not be possible that something is more distinguished.
Right, but man, they're even better at home. Okay, I
but
think I like that better.
but if so, why is the tax for that quick alarm?
Well, I guess the tax for it is you don't get to be with somebody that awesome without realizing that the very things that make them that awesome could take them away in a heartbeat, right? Like there's a tax for being married to a guy like Frederick, who is so hugely nationally important and such a good husband, and the tax is he might just be dead next week.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
right?
His profession was all that could ever make her friends wish that tenderness less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So clearly,
I mean, it's kind of like, what is it, yellow ribbon, like
Clearly.
in American, like
Yeah.
we worry about, Gold Star
look,
mothers, and,
look.
like there's obviously the same kind of worry in Jane Austen's time as we have
look,
now.
for close to 20 years now, my brother's been in the Border
Yeah.
Patrol.
And Dana,
And-
my brother-in-law, too.
And my mother still calls me.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say this in whatever public venue, but I will. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But my mother still calls me if she sees any headline
Yeah.
about anything that might mean a Border Patrol agent got into a difficult situation.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you think everything's okay?"
Yeah. I
And
don't think that goes away for
there is-
a lot of professions, right?
Yeah.
And most famously, probably military or military adjacent professions and police. But
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting that her friends have to worry about this too. Like they sort of that's part of the community. Speaking of respecting the community.
Right.
So one of the things that Anne's going to rely on her friends.
Right.
They're the only other people that understand. Like,
Right.
people who have been there.
This is a good point. This is maybe a high note to end on.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think that this is a downer.
Yeah.
It was just so mysterious. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, my initial reading was like, "Oh shit, he died."
Right. Right.
But I don't think so now. But there was just something so like convoluted about it that I was just like, "Did he just die?"
Right.
But the other thing that has really happened here, if we kind of like go back to like the wrap up in this final chapter, an awful lot of sea captains married an awful lot of aristocratic or aristocratic adjacent women. Like English society is like tilting a whole different direction all of a sudden here in like 18.
And that means new communities are going to form, and women like Anne are going to be the new big thing. It's not going to be women like her older sister anymore.
Right.
And
And
so
Sir
the
Walter,
society has really no use for Elizabeth anymore.
and Sir Walter is just relegated as this.
He doesn't
as
have the
this-
sense
this
of
artifact.
Providence gave him this thing, but he didn't know how to adapt. And
Right, and then here
even
come
that
these
book. I mean, it's fitting
Right.
that we begin with this useless book.
Right.
It's like, well, scribble in your book all you want, but it's
Yeah.
these men of action and these women of action
Right.
that are going to reshape England.
move the world forward. Yeah,
it's,
and
yes.
I think in the future, if someone says, "What about Persuasion?" I'm going to say, I think it's just this crazy optimistic vision about like England getting better because of this injection of like real like human endeavor instead of this like archival aristocratic thing.
That's definitely my walk away from it, and I also realize, that it's. I suspected before we had this second video, and I guess we'll have one more where we talk criticism, so we'll get a chance to do this again. About probably of the 4 of the 5 we read so far. I can't really do this until we finish Northanger, but I mean, right now this one's feeling like my favorite of the Austen novels. A lot of points for Sense and Sensibility, a lot of points for Pride and Prejudice. Moments of Emma are fire, moments of Mansfield Park are fire, but I think, it's not. I think that my issue with Emma, like when I was complaining about it, I was like, but I don't like any of the characters. And I think that's still, a point. But it's like, this novel gives me unlikable characters who still I find interesting.
Yeah.
In a way that
along
Emma
with
didn't
some
quite
likable
do.
characters.
Well, along with likable characters. But even like, I just found Mr. Elliot and Mrs. Clay, and like, even as stupid as Elliot is, like, you know what it is like, I think in Emma, the people that Austen is convinced are the good characters, I still think I don't like them. Whereas here, it's like, okay, the ones you ought to like, I do like them.
Right.
And then I'm able to enjoy we said our secret favorite thing about Emma was the sort of low-key villainy of the father, by far. That he's just this like parasite on everything, this monster.
Yeah.
But this one I think ranks, for whatever, I got to think about it more, but this probably ranks my favorite of the 5 so far in current moment.
I like it. I don't think I'd put it ahead of either Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility. But I could see it coming in a strong third. I mean, if we had to rank in that sense. But again, Northanger still.
And Northanger,
still hovering
from my
out
understanding, is going to be also a swerve because it was like the first one she started writing, but it was published posthumously or something. Like,
yeah, I don't think she had final say on the draft or. We'll see what happens. I'm sure the editor will.
But before we get to Northanger, and perhaps soon, we can do a day with the Norton criticism and see what's up with that. This edition came out in, kind of close with this thought, and then we have stuff to do. But this edition is a 2013 edition. I don't know if others have come out
I don't know.
since then. But here we are 12 years later, and so it'll be interesting to see what kind of criticism and contexts that Meyer Spacks chooses.
Well, I'm intrigued. The back of the book points out that one of the things that we get in the criticism section is an excerpt from William Haley's 1785 essay on old maids.
Oh, nice. That is a worry that Anne's at 27. She's thinking, I'm going to be an old maid.
Well, I remember kind of thinking at one point, like, she's almost 30.
And unlike Emma, where Emma properly is bragging to her friend, she's like, listen, I don't need to get married. I already run things. I'm going to get this house. There's no entail there.
Anne has none of that.
Yeah, Anne is going to be like an old maid in the negative sense of the word.
Yeah. Yeah, in the Mrs. Smith sort of,
Yeah, because Mrs. Smith, man, like, it's like she's decrepit, and then you realize she's like 30.
Right. And
she's
then,
like, ooh, put me in the hot baths, I can't walk. And I feel like she's like 80.
And then Wentworth fixes her finances, and she's like, oh.
She's going to be out at the club tomorrow night,
Right.
Age is a weird thing in Austin.
It is.
But it is a weird thing in our own world, too.
Well, and
It's
illness.
a good note to, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
as we know, you and I have both gone
Right.
through some stuff that made us feel
Nothing-
like old men in the last
nothing
year.
quite like not being able to move around.
Yeah, it'll
So,
teach you some things. All right.
with that-
thank y'all, whoever watched.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
and we'll come back with the criticism soon.
Yes.